In the last video, we used Node.js to create a backend server. So we created a web server that we could run on our local machine that would receive requests and send back responses. And we were kind of cavalier about sending a status code. And we said, oh, I'm going to send a status code 200, and that just says everything is fine. So what I would like to do in this video is examine a little bit more what a status code is. So I've pulled up this website, which is w3org, and it gives me this listing of what status codes are. And so the idea behind status codes is it's a message from the server back to the browser to give feedback or some kind of status message about the request that the server received and how it handled that. In other words, you've heard 404 all the time, and we just assumed that means file not found, but what exactly does that mean? Well, let's look at what some of these status codes can be. We used 200 in our last video example, and the 200 is a message from the server to the browser saying the request has succeeded. The information with the response is dependent on the method used in the request, for example. So what it's giving you is more discussion about the fact that everything worked just fine. All right, well, we sort of established that in our last video. Let's scroll down and see some of these other, I'm just looking through some other status codes here. Redirection is the status codes for 300. And there's various choices. 301 means that the page that was being requested is permanently moved to another page, to another location, and the browser should therefore cache that new location and look at a new location instead of the requested location. I'm going to continue on down. You can look through these in all your leisurely time if you have something you want to read at night before you go to sleep. 307, temporary redirect. So this just redirects the page, but the browser is not instructed to cache that new location, and we'll play with that one here in a minute. Let's scroll down to 404. We'll see here's the 404 error message, not found. The server has not found anything matching the request. So we see that 404, we throw it around a lot, but now we're starting to see what that really means. It's a message from the server back to the browser saying, I can't find whatever it is you just asked me to look for. So let's look a little bit more at these status codes. This is where we left off. This is the server that we created, and I'm going to head and get it started again. There's the name of this file, index.js. So I'll start that server, and shouldn't have closed out that browser page. Let me reopen my... All right, so then we 127. We could also do localhost. That does the same thing. And I think we're listing on port 3000. There it is. Okay, so localhost also is another word for that 127.0.0.1. So this is where we left off. I'm going to right click on this page and go to the inspect element that we're very comfortable with, hopefully at this point. This time I'm going to click on this network tab. And you can do this in Chrome or in Firefox. I'm in Firefox, obviously. It's letting me know I need to reload the page in order to see whatever it is I was hoping for. And so now you start to see more information that makes sense. So this is that 200 response code that we sent back to this browser page. And it says that it was a method get. Well, we're getting comfortable with the get and post. So if we don't give a page any method, in other words, in our form, sometimes we've given the method post, then it's automatically a get request. So since we didn't define anything, it's automatically a get. And there's our localhost 3000, that's the domain. If I double click on this, then I get more information. For example, here's the header information that was the browser just received. So this is all the information that gets sent from the server to the browser in the form of a header. When a browser sends information to a server, it also sends its own set of headers. So there's our 200 status code. This is the version type of HTTP protocol we're using. Make this a little bit bigger. You can see things like the response headers. So, and here's the request headers that server had received. So this is a good place to start looking to get comfortable with what's kind of going on. How are the browser and server communicating with each other? So we'll put that aside for the moment. Let's send a different response header and see what happens. So in this case, I'm going to send a 307, which, if you remember just a few minutes ago, I said was a redirect. So the idea here is that a browser requested a page that perhaps the server knows that it was moved. So I'm going to put location, and we're going to redirect the browser to a different location. So let's see, let's go HTTP. Let's go to the infamous w3schools.com, www.w3schools.com. All right, and I'm going to save that. Anytime you make a change to the server configuration, you need to Control-C. I'm going to stop this current server that's running, and then I have to restart it because we've made some changes here. So I'm going to restart it then, arrow up key on my keyboard, or node index.js. All right, so now let's see what happens. So I'm going to go back to my browser. We'll bring this down so we can see. Make a new request. That request was received, and the response was sent back that we need to redirect the page. And let's see, if we go to the very top of this status, we see that the 307 was received by the browser, and then it did the redirect as it was requested. And then, of course, that page is doing all kinds of requests. So every time an asset is requested, you can see that being logged here in this display. So the only thing that's being sent back and forth is just not a single request, but any asset that's being requested by the browser also has to be received. So here's the main.js file. Any images, there's an image right here that's being received. There's another image. So a single page, even though it looks very textual in nature in this case, certainly has a lot of requests that it has that it requested from the server that it's now being received. So lots more going on behind the scenes than we had anticipated. All right, or maybe had thought of in the past. So let's try a 404. Let's say, let's say we do that in the next video, because that way I'll put together some other concepts there. So let's say we're done for the moment, and what we've seen in this video is a little bit more discussion of what the status code, what it is, and how the server uses it to communicate a status back to the server, or to the browser.